Hey again, Andrew here. The Kayfun. Absolutely, without doubt, my go-to atomizer. I use this all the time. I have a couple of them with different juices on the go the whole time. Now, what I've done over the last couple of weeks is I did a couple of videos of different coils, because what's absolutely critical to these things is that you get your coil right. If you get your coil right, then the wicking is perfect on it, you get no dry hits, you get fantastic flavour, and it just does exactly what it's meant to do. So I suppose the whole time there's a bit of a search on as to what the perfect coil is going to be. And it sort of evolves, and various different people have various different ways. And what this coil I'm going to show you today is, it's a refinement of the previous two coils that I've done, if you like. And this refinement comes from a chap called LeeM on UK Vapers on the forum there. And basically what it is, it's very, very similar to the last one that I did, which was the Navy coil, but just with one fundamental difference in it. And that one fundamental difference, I think, makes a considerable difference to the overall flavour that actually comes out of it. So what I have in this one at the moment is that coil. I've had it going for a couple of days, and no dry hits, amazing taste off it. So let's go down close and I'll show you how to do this particular one. Right, first thing we're going to need is our Kayfun. Take it apart. All we need to do really is take the bottom off and then also take the chimney off. So we can put this to the side here. If we unscrew it there, there's the chimney head, there's the cylinder there, and then there's the deck. Now what's important on the deck is that the screws are undone enough that you can actually catch wire underneath it there. So they seem to be undone enough. So we can pop that onto there. Also what we're going to need is we're going to need some 3mm silica. This is just the standard stuff. It's not the eco wool, but it would work with eco wool as well, this particular coil. That's about, what is that there, about 13 centimeters, 12, 13 centimeters, something like that. And then what we have is some 0.20 Canthal. Now with whenever you're actually making a coil, you should always burn the wire beforehand. Just give it a little bit of a toasting. And what this does is, it just means that, running out there we go. What it means is it just takes out any of the impurities out of the wire, but also in addition to that, it actually sort of detensions the wire a bit, so it makes it a little bit easier to actually to wrap it. So you can do this with a lighter, or that's just a little kitchen creme brulee type of blowtorch. Anything like that will do the job fine. So we have our wire there, which has now been burned. We have two screwdrivers. We have a little micro flathead, and then also a little micro crosshead or Phillips screwdriver. And then finally, the one thing that you use for every coil, well I certainly do, is nail scissors. It just makes it so much cleaner to cut. If you're cutting silica, particularly with the scissors, obviously with this motion here, what tends to happen is that the silica slides forward as you're cutting it, as the pressure is coming down on it, because the pressure is coming from one side. So that means that you get halfway through the cut and the thing has slid forward and you end up with a big tail hanging off it. Whereas at least with going with one of these, what happens is that all of the cutting force is going down. So that means that you're not left with any of this sliding thing that happens. So I think they're fantastic. I use them all the time. Okay, let's get this thing underway. Now, first thing to do is you take your silica, it's folded in half, and then what we want to do is just cut it in half to that. And then usually the easiest thing is take the cleaner ends. Just move all this stuff out of the way. Get the cleaner ends, and essentially what we're going to do is I want to connect those two there, right, with my wire. Okay, and my wire has been flamed to take any impurities out, and also take the tension out as well. So what we want to essentially do is, our coil is probably going to be about 1 centimeter in the middle there. something along those lines. So what you can do is just go slightly over that to maybe, to give yourself a bit of room. You'll have an overlap of maybe nearly 3 centimeters there between the two of them. Maybe in fact give yourself 3. That just gives you plenty of room to actually maneuver. Okay, so hold them side by side, and then what we want to do is wrap our coil. To do that, we hold that. This is the way I do it anyway. Hold it between your 2 fingers with the wick sort of trapped in between as well. So then what we want to do is just get some really even coils. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and then on this end we can then just undo it a bit, just to pull it back up to get it about right. So let's see, how many have we got here? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 and 6. Okay, now I think I might actually go for one less than that. I think I'll go for a 4 and a 5. Okay, so we've got 4 on the top and we've got 5 on the bottom just here. Now you can see a couple of those are bunched slightly, but we just need to just wiggle those out a bit just to get them nice and clean on both sides. So that to me is looking pretty good. Okay, so here we have our little deck. What we may do is just slacken off the screws there just ever so slightly. Should do it. Now what we want to do is make sure that it's the bottom part here where we've got the legs coming out. That's what goes onto the bottom of the deck. Okay, so what we will be doing is laying it on like this here. Okay, now for me the best way to lay it on is put it into the center. Let's go in a little bit closer here. Put it into the center like that. Okay, and then just twist it like that. And if you twist it and then hold it, you can then turn one in there and you can turn the other one in there. So now it's caught on both sides. And tension wise it should be around right. So what we can do now is just give that a little bit of a tighten up and also give this one a little bit of a tighten up. So that's how we're looking. Then we can just twist it around and straighten it a little bit. It doesn't need to be completely straight, by the way. Okay, I'm happy with that. So what I'm going to do is actually get rid of the wires because they drive me mad if they're floating around the place and I keep stabbing myself. So let's just get those off. Either little wiggle, which whenever you do a little wiggle on camera, it never breaks. So let's not do a little wiggle this time. Let's give it one of these. Okay, so that's that one gone there. And then on this side here, that is that one gone. And let me just make sure that we're doubly tightened up. Yeah, everything's good there. So that's how we're looking. Okay, our next thing that we want to do is, you may be able to see just underneath there in the center. Let's see if you can see it. If I lift that up, you can see just in here, just in there, there's the little air hole. And you can see a little metal collar around it. Now it's absolutely essential, first of all, that that isn't actually blocked up, but second of all, that the coil doesn't actually touch that. If it does, it's going to short. That's going to be it. So you need to ensure that the coil is sitting proud of that. The easiest way to do it is just get a little flathead screwdriver like this, pop it in underneath, and then just ever so gently just raise it up a little bit. It doesn't need to go far, just enough so that it's sitting proud of the air hole and has no hope of actually touching it. So that's how we're sitting now. That may even be a bit tight, a bit high rather, but I think it's probably okay. Okay, so that's where we are as far as that's concerned. Next thing we need to do is we have some excess here. We don't need these tails here. There we go. We don't need these little tails on either side. We want to actually trim them back. So what I'll do is I'll, again, with the nail scissors, just get right tight back in there. Cut that one off, if you can see. And then we'll do exactly the same thing on the other side. And again, just get in nice and tight. And bam, we're gone. So we're left with this, which is nice and clean and tidy. We have our coil in the middle. It's joining two pieces of 3mm silica. Now we revert back to basically the way we do the navy nest, which is to get these ends to touch down onto the deck. Here's the side here, and the juice comes in here, and what we want to do is make sure that these lay down along here and then go up, so that when the juice comes in, it touches off them and then travels up into the actual into the coil. So that's what we're going to do now. What I might do is go back ever so slightly, just because this is kind of always a bit fiddly. Right, so let's see if I hold it to you here. What we're doing essentially is turning. Might be easier to do it in this hand, would it? We're getting the wick, we're laying it along the bottom, kind of like that, and then we're sending it up. Okay? So laying it along the bottom, and then halfway along the bottom, sending it skywards. And we're going to be doing exactly the same thing on the other side. So again, laying it along the bottom, and then sending it skywards. So it's going to look something like that, sitting on the deck. Okay? So this can be a bit fiddly, but you get used to it after a while. So we've got that one in place, and now what we need to do is the same thing with this one. So there we are, laid down at the side in each case with our tails heading skywards. So what we can do is then just pop this over. Now what you need to be careful here is that when you let this go, that the whole thing just doesn't spring back out again. So you just, gently get it over it. If you do it slowly, you'll be able to slip it on over the top, and everything should have stayed in place. And now when we actually look in to it, you can see it there. We've got each of the individual strands now, because we cut it in half, each of the individual strands heading down to the bottom, touching off the deck, and then heading upwards. And that's exactly what we want. And from here on in, it's navy nest. We're doing the same thing, okay? So let's finish this off. And what we want to do is give ourselves about 1 centimetre. So with what's sticking out there, and make sure it hasn't lifted off the bottom. Make sure it's still sitting down at the bottom. As long as it's still sitting down at the bottom, we need about 1 centimetre, roughly around 1 centimetre on each of these two. Okay, so just do something like that. All right. Now what we're going to do is we're going to bring this one around to here, and we're going to bring this one around to here. So again, as I said, just like the navy nest thing. So let's put, easiest thing usually is to just pop it in. Give a little twist while you're popping it in. Just pop it in so that it sits down a bit. And once it's done that, then you can start working it down. Okay, so as you see there, we're working that in around the edge there. Again, not packing it down. Never ever pack anything in a Kayfun. So that's the first one complete. And then the second one, again, what we'll do is we'll just shove it down there. And then move it down around the edges. So that's something like this. Now again, what you want to do is try and keep them clear at the edge so you've got a beautiful clean coil in the middle. You don't want stuff, you know, hanging all over it or whatever. I mean, really what this wick around the edge here is here to do is just to make sure it keeps feeding this central part, okay? That's what it is. We don't want it lying on top of it, you know. So I think if you end up with something like that, then you should be in a very good, in a good place. So let's pop it onto a Provari and see what sort of resistance we've got. Actually, before doing that, yeah, I'll stick it straight onto the Provari. Now, what are we saying there? 1.8. So that's pretty much bang on. That's what I want. Let's have a look at it here. That's glowing nicely. So this is with a 4-5 wrap of 0.2 Canthal on 2 strands of 3mm silica wick. So what I'd always tend to do again is just burn it for a little while. Sometimes you hear a bit of fizzing and popping. Just do it until the fizzing and popping stops, and then that means that it's all nice and clean. So there we go. Now, next question. What am I actually going to put onto this one? And I think today it is going to be Minotaur. Yes, it's going to be Minotaur. Minotaur. This is from the House of Liquid. Absolutely gorgeous stuff. So let's just pop in some, because you should always just get some liquid on it before you actually assemble the whole thing. So that should do. Let's see, what have we got this set at here? That should be about right. So let's just see what it looks like, if it's doing its job. Yes, I think it's safe to say that that's doing its job. Good. Okay, well, let's put it back together again. Okay, we're back again. Coil in place. What we need to do now is just fill it up. Minotaur, beautiful, beautiful tobacco liquid. I just have a filler bottle here. Now, whenever you're filling up a Kayfun, when you're filling up pretty much any of these things, you should always take your time. You know, force anything, you're going to get imbalances of pressure, and it's going to end up going all over the place. So with a Kayfun, always fill at an angle like this, and as you can see there, you can see that there's a bubble just starting to rise towards the end, and once it hits the top, that's it. You're full. You don't need to go any further than that at all. So let's find our where's our filler screw? Now this is one of the biggest problems with a Kayfun, is the filler screw. I don't know how many times, there it is, got it. So that's all done now. It's all filled up. I've got it sitting there on a little roller. This is a Kayfun actually, which I polished. It originally came in the stainless steel matte color, but I decided to give it a go because this roller needed a little friend, and I think it works lovely on it. So once you've actually filled it up for the first time, it's always worth giving it a bit of a prime. To prime it, essentially what happens is the little hole on the side there, if you actually put your finger over that and then just take a couple of inhales, a couple of drags off it, what it will then do is it'll suck liquid into the chamber. So that just means it charges it up, and that's a good way to get it started. What sometimes can happen is that you end up putting too much into it, and it gets flooded and it gets gurgled. It gurgles. When that happens, what's really important is you can blow it out, but don't blow it out like that, because if you do, it'll just keep pumping liquid out. what you do is you get a tissue or whatever, wrap it around the top, and then blow it out that way. And that means then that, you know, you can see the liquid is now down here. It means it's not feeding more into the channels to be blown out. Whereas if you try and clear it that way, all it's doing is it's just forcing more and more liquid down into it, and you're just on a hiding to nothing and a complete waste of time. So that's on that score. So let's pop this on and see what it vapes like. As I said, it came out at 1.8, which is pretty much perfect for me. As I said, we have Minotaur in here. It's just terrific. Absolutely terrific. I would say of all the coils I've tried, this is the one, I've been using it a couple of days now. This is the one which I'm certainly going to stick with. Some of the others have their benefits as well, but at the moment this one just seems to work really well. It doesn't matter how much you're chugging on it, it never goes dry at all. So all in all, I think an excellent coil. So again, I'd like to just say thanks to LeeM on UK Vapers for, you know, his contribution in saying to actually split the wicks and do it that way, because I think that makes a difference. Certainly taste wise, this is as good a coil as any that I've ever come across. It really is terrific. So I hope you got something out of that, and best of luck in putting this coil together. Catch you again soon. Cheers.